Yes.
All right, great. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 5th Academy session exclusively for membership by Formula Bharat. We have with us today Mr. Sarvesh Blank, who shall be presenting on the topic Sponsorship through Social Media by DigiChefs. Sarvesh Blank is a partner and creative director at DigiChefs, a 7-year-old integrated digital marketing agency based in Mumbai. Sarvesh has had a decade-plus experience working with 300-plus brands across sectors like beauty, lifestyle, FMCG, automobile, education, real estate, technology, healthcare, and more. The content that will be covered during this workshop session is as below: identifying the right sponsors, finding and engaging with them, value proposition on social media, executing the plan, performance measurement, and sponsor retention. Let's begin the session. Over to you, Sarvesh.
Lovely. Thank you so much for that kind introduction. Hey guys, by the way, you can interact with me in the chat section there. I would love to know that I am talking to humans and not just going on a monologue. So first, hi. Hello. Can I get some response from people?
Guys, it would be great if you all interact with the speaker. I mean, you all can even type it in the chat box.
Yeah, you can unmute yourself. I'm cool either way.
Yeah. Don't be shy. Okay.
Yes, a lot of shy folks here.
It looks like no one is in the mood to say hi as well. It's
ouch. All right. No worries. I guess let's push forward then. I'll just share my screen. Let me know if that's visible.
Sure.
Can you guys see my screen?
Yes, it's visible.
Lovely. So guys, as you know, the session is about sponsorship through social media. Behind that fancy title of partner and creative director, what I actually do is I work with brands on their content and social media side of things. I help them create campaigns. I help them with their social media strategy, and I help them sort of use platforms to build their brands, build awareness, and sort of engage with their customers and build that community around it. That's effectively what I do. Now, sponsorship is something which, I mean, I remember back in my college days where we did that. And it was pretty much the standard way of, oh, do you know this person? Do you know that person? Or randomly visiting people, or, just finding some jugaad, some connection somewhere, and then getting a foot in and trying your best to convince people. I think pretty much that was all that we could do at that point in time. Of course, things have changed, times have changed. While that still continues to be a very effective mechanism of finding sponsors, I think social media also has a pretty significant role to play there, right? Cool. So the way the session is structured is we will have about, let's say, 40-45 minutes of the whole presentation. And post that, we will open up for questions, a Q&A session for the last 15 minutes, right? Of course, if during the course of the session, if you have a question on any particular section, feel free to either put it in the comment section or you can just unmute and ask it. I am hoping that the shyness goes away as we move further into the discussion. I don't want to feel like I'm talking to a wall out there, right? Or I'm just monologuing. As much as I love to speak, I would love to know that I'm speaking to human beings out there. Cool. Okay. So let's get started. I think first, a very happy Engineers Day to people. If you didn't know, today is World Engineers Day. So very happy Engineers Day to everyone out there. I think without you or the future you, what would the world be? Right? By the way, from one engineer to another, I am also an engineer there. I did computer engineering. Of course, like all engineers, you do engineering and then you try to figure out what you want to do in life. I wanted to do marketing, and that's why I'm here today. Thanks. Cool. All right. We will start with the most basic of things out there, which is what is social media, right? Uh, and I don't necessarily mean in the sense that, oh, I need a textbook definition. It's not like Three Idiots where the professor asks what is a machine and there's a very long definition. Right? Uh, it's to actually understand how does social media operate. There are a lot of folks out there who think that social media is either frivolous, there is nothing to it. I mean, you just have to put some content out there and that's about it. Right? I mean, there's no rocket science to it. True. While there's a bunch of people who feel that social media is super complicated, especially when you're doing it for brands, I mean, and there must be a lot of complicated strategy or things that go behind the picture there. The truth is somewhere in the middle. It's neither too complicated nor is it too basic, frivolous, or simple out there. Right? But the easiest way to understand social media is if you understand that it's just a content delivery system. Right? Not to be confused with your content delivery network, the whole server thing out there. It's not that. What I'm referring to is social media is all about content. Right? Content does not necessarily mean you putting a post out there, or you putting a story out there, or a reel out there, or anything like that. That is, of course, one form of content. Even your interactions, when you comment on someone's content out there, when you reply to a DM, or when you send a DM to someone, any interaction that you have with a brand, with a person, with any entity on social media, that, in my definition, is content. Right? And it's important to understand that because if you realize that, okay, it's all about content and everything you say, do, share is content, is when you can be mindful about it. Right? You'd be really surprised. Forget individual people. There are so many brands out there doing social media for quite a while now who still don't get it. They still don't understand that the basic fundamental of social media is just content. I mean, you can use it as a online brochure for your products and services, but effectively, that's not how it works. With that simple definition, we will move forward to what should your social media presence look like. While the whole session is going to talk about identifying sponsors, reaching out to them, connecting with them, offering a value proposition, and sort of then getting it executed, and then measuring the performance and things like that. I think the first fundamental step is you need to have a strong presence on social media for you to actually do all these steps beyond that, right? Take an example like this. Let's say you come across a new fashion brand. You just hear that name from someone and you go on, let's say, Instagram, and you find their profile. Now you go to their profile and you see that they have, let's say, 2-digit followers, right? 40, 50 something. Are you going to trust that brand? Very likelihood, no. You would feel, okay, this brand is either too young or it's something shady going on, something spammy out there. The trust factor is not going to be built. Right? As against you go to that page and you see, oh, it has, let's say, 50,000, 100,000, or 200,000 following base over there. You will very likely get the perception that, oh, it's a popular brand. It's just that I didn't know about it. And there are a lot of people who are following it. That builds trust. So there are few factors that you have to consider, and sort of that's basically the hygiene that you have to ensure from your social media presence before you start actually getting into the whole sponsorship thing and approaching and all that. Right? Now, few key pointers there. Number one, the hygiene of your profile, right? I mean, let's say you're on LinkedIn and you don't have a proper picture, you don't have a proper cover image, you don't have a proper bio line, an about section, your education put up. All those things are super important from two perspectives. One, the platform sort of encourages the reach of profiles that sort of have all the hygiene checks in place, right? As against profiles that have incomplete information. The platform feels that a profile that has plenty of information, everything is sort of filled there, is much more authentic and should be shown to many more people. Right? And the second part, of course, is when someone visits your profile, someone happens to come by it, when they see that it is properly filled with information, all the right places, the things are put in, it again builds to the whole credibility part of the conversation there, right? So that's the most basic thing. Ensure that all your social media profiles, wherever you're present, has a proper picture, has a proper name, a proper bio section, and any other field that needs to be filled out there. The next point is reasonable quantity of content. Again, taking the example of a brand that you've just come across. If you go to their page and you see that they have like, let's say 2 or 3 pieces of content, that's about it, right? It's again going to feed into the mindset of, oh, these guys are pretty new, may not be extremely trustworthy, right? So you have a content base out there, you have put out enough content pieces, is where it again builds that, okay, so the person has been there for quite a while. They have enough content there for me to actually go through and get a sense of who they are, what do they talk about, what do they like, what are their opinions and stuff like that, right? So the quantity of content matters too. The next, of course, is quality of content, which is something that I would say it's okay to go a little soft on yourself there, right? Very frankly, chasing perfection in terms of that your profile has the best content out there and all of those things is something that probably will happen in due course of time, but that need not be a necessarily goal right at the beginning, right? But of course, overall, if you're going to approach professional people out there, right, your content will need to reflect along those lines, right? If you're going to talk about a certain subject matter, your content will need to reflect on that aspect, right? Then there's, of course, reasonable number of followers and engagement. Same logic that, when there are very, very few followers or there is very little engagement on the content that happens, it does deter the opinion of people in terms of, oh, should I engage with them? Think of an example like this. When you see a post, let's say even a meme out there, and you see that it has 0 comments, there's a very high chance that you would not want to be the first one to comment on it, right? But if you see there are like 10, 15, 20, 50, 100 comments out there, you would feel much more comfortable in just sort of sliding into the comment section and then putting your thoughts out there. So this is what we call engagement leads to engagement, right? Which is where you will have to sort of seed engagement, which is where you'll have to sort of maybe get your friends to follow your page or run some follower campaigns and things like that, right? So this basically is the hygiene that needs to be set in place on your social media profiles, be it where you're Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, wherever, before you actually get into the action of, finding sponsors and engaging with them, because you're going to put all that effort in, and if your bases are not covered, it's just going to lead to disappointment, right? So might as well avoid that as much as possible. Cool. Then we move to the next part, which is what the session had promised, which is identifying the right sponsors, finding engaging content, value proposition, executing the plan, performance measurement, and sponsor retention. Now, of course, if you have any questions during any part of the session, as I said, feel free to put it in the comments. I'll be more than happy to answer them. Else, save it for the end. Cool. Let's begin with the first one, which is identifying the right sponsors. Okay. Put aside the whole part of the traditional way of finding sponsors that we typically do, right? Let's focus purely on the social media side of things here. Or in a way, you can align your physical finding of sponsors and sort of then migrate that effort onto social media as well, right? Now, when you're trying to identify someone who's going to be the right sponsor for you, now in your case, particularly, it would be certain type of brands, big or small, brands that would be probably very relevant to the engineering automobile domain there. Or it could also be brands who are just interested into sort of student upskilling or student welfare out there and things like that. There could also be your typical FMCG brands out there who may just want to sort of, give a push to this amazing initiative that you guys are doing out there. and want to be a sponsor out there. Now, here is what you do to identify your target audience. And your target audience in this case are the sponsors that you're trying to aim for, right? Let's say you're taking the approach of, okay, this is a brand that I think I need to sort of approach. Of course, you will not approach the brand, you'll approach people in the brand, right? The first thing you need to check, of course, is the alignment of the brand. How likely are they to sort of even agree to have a conversation with you about sponsorship, right? I mean, forget the part of whether they're going to agree to do it or not, but just giving you an audience out there, giving you a chance to put your case forward. So the first thing to do is check that alignment. If it's an engineering brand, if it's a brand in the automobile sector, any of those are an absolute go-to. I mean, it's a no-brainer out there, right? Or you can also figure out that, okay, so these are type of brands which have done sponsorships in similar sector in the past, but may not be from the industry that this entire initiative is aligned with, right? Now, something like that can also work. So the first thing you check is the brand alignment. Of course, then come the points of geography and demography. Now, in this case, because again, as I said, you can't approach a brand, you can approach the people in the brand, right? So you'll figure out, okay, how likely is it that geography is going to matter in terms of if I'm a team from Mumbai, if I'm a team from Bangalore, if I'm a team from Jaipur, will brands or people that I need to connect with being in those vicinity matter for me? So if the answer to that is yes, then geography becomes a very important filter for you, as does demography in terms of what would be the age group of these people. Are they going to be managers or head of CSR or head of operations? What sort of roles or designations would these people be at for me to figure out how to approach them? Right? And a very simple way to check that is you would have already seen sponsors in the past. You would have interacted with the alumni network of the group here. You would have interacted with your own seniors in college. And you can just get an understanding from them as to, okay, so who are these people that you guys typically talk to when it comes to any conversation around sponsorship? So that will help you sort of narrow down the demography part as well. Then come the elements of professional and personal aspects. Let's say you have zeroed in on someone from Bosch. Okay, you feel that, okay, Bosch is a brand that could sponsor my project out there. And within Bosch, I've identified that, okay, so these are the 4-5 set of people that I feel can be the ones that I should talk to. You need to check two things. And trust me, identifying the right people to talk to is actually half the battle. The other half, of course, is actually talking to them. So knowing that, okay, so this is a manager from a certain division that I have identified from Bosch. I found him on LinkedIn. And now, what are his professional inclinations? What are his personal inclinations? What is he passionate about? What are the causes that he aligns with? Getting all those understandings in place are going to help you narrow down in terms of who's the right person to talk to and approach. Trust me, all that you're trying to do is narrow down in terms of your efforts being targeted, right? Because there's only so much time and so much effort that you can put behind getting the right sponsors out there. You don't want to end up spending efforts sort of being spread everywhere, right? And of course, there's the element of having a similar past, which refers to that if they have a similar past in terms of having participated or sponsored or been associated with events like this, or anything even peripherally connected to it, are great signs that, okay, these could be the people that you can interact with. And of course, these pointers don't just come in handy while identifying them. They also come in handy at the next stage where you will be interacting with them, right? So these are a few aspects to be kept in mind on social media in terms of, okay, how do you identify who's going to be a right person to interact with so they could potentially be a sponsor that you're looking for. Cool. Moving on, finding and engaging with them on social media, right? Which of course can be a little anxiety driving, nerve wracking, because I understand that not everybody is a salesperson. While I like to think sales is a very life skill rather than a very functional skill, because we're all selling ourselves at any given point in time. And of course, in your teams, you would have some people that you would put in charge of finding and getting sponsors out there, and they would probably be the people who would be great at putting their thoughts and points forward. But of course, it can be a little challenging. So here is what you do in sort of finding and then engaging with them once you have sort of shortlisted your target audience. Right? The first thing to do is choosing the right platform. Right? In terms of social media, choosing where do you interact with them so as to get the highest chance of having a conversation or getting visibility. Right? Now, in very high likelihood, LinkedIn and Twitter could be great places for you to sort of zero in and interact with these folks out there. Of course, LinkedIn could be much more easier because then you can narrow down by organizations. You can go to the organization page, go to the people section out there and actually filter it out and find the people out there. Of course, let's say you have found them already and you're just trying to approach them through various channels, then go for Twitter. That's great as well. I mean, if you found them on LinkedIn and Facebook and they seem to be active there, no harm in reaching out there as well. But it's about not spamming the person that you're trying to reach out to, being a little wise about and a little smart about it. So choose the priority of your platforms, right? I mean, at best, let's say go for two. If you haven't gotten any response for quite a lot of time, probably then explore other platforms as well. So LinkedIn and Twitter could be really interesting in these. LinkedIn is great for the one-to-one interaction that you would want to have. Twitter is great if you sort of just, want to throw a shot in the dark out there and just, hope that somebody picks it up and somebody responds to it and things like that. I mean, we have seen instances of people putting content out there and people like Anand Mahindra being very interested in it and sort of even offering jobs to people, sponsoring things and stuff like that. Right? So Twitter is a great place from that perspective. LinkedIn is a great place for a one-to-one interaction perspective out there. Right? Cool. And the second step then is you stalk and then find the right people. I mean, a lot of us use social media for stalking. Finding the right sponsor just needs an application of that skill set, wherein you again study their profile. When you find them on LinkedIn or Twitter, anywhere, you study their profile thoroughly. You study their about, you study what the work that they have done in the past, their own experience, the kind of places that they have worked in, the kind of roles that they have worked in. You look at their content, you understand what do they talk about, what are their thought process, what are their opinions for, right? And you get an understanding of, okay, who's this person that I'm going to talk to. One of the problems that a lot of people asking for sponsorship that they end up making one of the mistakes is they don't do any research about the person that they're going to talk to. They do not put any effort in sort of trying to understand the person that they're going to interact with. And they have this ready-made template of the thing that they would say or the thing that they would present, and they just go throwing it randomly at different people out there. That's a strategy we call spray and pray, which means that you're just spraying things out there and praying that, oh, something sticks somewhere. Right? Being a little more targeted is, of course, a smarter way. Then, of course, the next point, which is connected to what I was just saying, that do a thorough research on them and the brand, right? Understand that what is it that they have been doing and sort of get a very clear picture when you have a conversation with them. Because trust me, nobody wants to talk to someone like, hi, my name is Sarvesh, I want sponsorship. I mean, you're not going to get a response out of that, or it's going to be a very, very functional transactional conversation that is very likely to end very quickly. Right? So, of course, you want to start with a conversation around something that may interest them, and not straight away jumping into, oh, this is what I want. Right? Then, of course, there is a part of how do you approach them exactly. Fine, you have identified them, you have found them, you have chosen the right platform, you have studied them, you have done your research, you know who they are. Now you have to actually talk to them, right? So how do you figure out that part? This is what you do. Okay. Now, of course, you understand this, that while we're talking about sponsorship through social media, there is an extension of that beyond social media as well. I mean, when we talk to clients, when we sort of approach clients, cold call them, cold email them, we have understood that sales, the fund of sales is a physical meet is always better than a video call, always better than a normal call, better than a DM and better than an email, right? The goal must be to push it forward, push that interaction forward to as much physical time that you can get with the person. right? Of course, it's not going to happen instantly. You will have to go through those stages out there. So a few things to be kept in mind when you approach someone. Number one, there is that have your elevator pitch ready. So, I mean, with the whole Shark Tank and startups and things like that, I'm sure you guys also must be very keen. Some of you may also be planning to build your own startups sometime in the future. An elevator pitch is something, what it means is if you're in an elevator and you come across a VC out there and you have just a minute or 30 seconds, can you pitch your idea within that time, right? So have that elevator pitch in place with you. And what that means is that in a very concise and very crisp manner, you're able to put forward the point in terms of why you, what is it that you're doing, what are you looking for, and what is it that you can bring to the table. Right? So have that in place, practice that, write it down, rewrite it, keep that crisp, interesting paragraph that you have written, which sort of is your elevator pitch. Right? The next part is be precise with what you expect and what you can offer. Right? Going around, or just putting vague things out there may not benefit your cause, because there is a very high likelihood that the people you're going to interact with would be seniors in the industry and would not have so much time for random conversations. So being precise with what the proposition is and what you're expecting out of it is something that can be very, very useful. But remember one thing there. It has to be a teaser or a trailer. It can't be the whole picture, right? You have to put it out there in such a way that there is something left, something desired for a follow-up conversation. I mean, you must have seen there are some movie trailers that just show the whole movie. I mean, you feel like, okay, why do I need to watch the movie now? I know exactly what is going to happen in the entirety of the movie, right? You do not want to do that. I mean, on LinkedIn, I get a lot of people sort of sending me DMs from a sales perspective. They want to pitch their services and products, and they have conveyed everything out there. And it's just that I have to say yes or no, right? Which is fine. I mean, I get that as a strategy. It's not the most effective one, because if you can create interest in me while giving me good amount of information, but yet creating interest where I want to know more, that's the sweet spot. That's exactly what takes a conversation for. Right? The next point is make it easy for them. And I can't stress enough on this aspect. To give an example, when people, let's say, again, taking a sales perspective out there, when people approach us and they're like, okay, so this is what I offer, or this is what I want from you, right? A lot of times it ends very abruptly and we are like, okay, so what do I do now? You told me this. What are you expecting from me? Right? So that sort of creates like a dead end zone. So you have to make it easy for the person that you're approaching. How do you make it easy? Easy in terms of a lot of things. Easy in terms of, okay, you want to have a conversation with them. So you tell them right there that, we would love to have a 10-minute conversation with you. You can let us know any slot that works for you between Monday to Friday, or, give them slots. Let them know that you're available along these timelines, as opposed to saying that, okay, we would love to talk to you anytime in the future, or we would love to talk to you. Okay, love to talk to you when? Right? Are you putting the burden of deciding when to talk on me, on the person that you're approaching? Why not create sort of a few options out there, and I can just choose and say, okay, you know what, let's go with option A. The second is means. Make it easy in terms of means, which is that we can get on a short call out there, or we can interact right here. If you can help me with your email ID, I would love to drop an email to you. We can get on a Gmeet call or a Zoom call. Give them options, right? But again, of course, be smart about it. Too many choices confuses people. Give them 2 or 3 options at max, so that they know that if you tell them, you know what, I would love to get on a call with you, but they don't want to get on a call with you, and the conversation ends right there. Correct? So give them a few options in terms of the means or the medium of interacting with you. The next is diverting. A lot of times you may reach out to someone and you see that they're not responding to you, right? I mean, you can follow up a few times out there, but beyond the point, it's just going to get annoying and spammy. So one of the smarter ways is you tell them that, could you point me in the direction of someone who would be the right person for this conversation out there? I don't want to take up a lot of your time, but if you could just direct me to someone, I think that would be really helpful. So you're trying to not have a dead end, but rather have a diversion, so that they can, maybe if they are not interested in talking to you or they are not the right people for it, they can point you in someone's direction who is, right? And an opt-out option, which instead of just following up with them again and again and again and they not responding to you, you can also tell them, right? Just let me know that if this is not something that you're interested in, let's say after your second or third follow-up, you can just put it out there that if you're not interested, just let me know. I'm sure that I'll not trouble you with any more follow-ups. And that's okay. They can choose to respond to you that way. And the last point is never close the loop, even if you get a no. What that means is that if someone tells you, no, I'm not interested, right? You reach out to them and they straight away say, sorry, I'm not interested. You don't just say, okay, or you don't just stop messaging them. You try to keep the conversation open at the end. You interact with them in such a way and say, no worries, I really appreciate you responding to this. In case if you ever feel that this is the kind of thing you'd be interested in, or if you know someone who would want to help us out in this goal, I would love to interact with them or with you in the future. Now, what that does is that keeps an open-ended conversation there, which can be revisited sometime in the future, right? So these are some tips on how do you engage with them on social media. Now, we go to the value proposition. What is it that you have to offer to someone when you're talking to them on social media, right? Cool. Remember, there are only two things that brands typically look for when it comes to sponsoring things, right? One is branding and the other is awareness. The difference there is, so branding is, let me talk about awareness first. Awareness basically is they want the name to be known out there. They want more people to see their brand name. They want more people to see what the brand is doing, what its product offerings or services are. So the word is spreading through content or word of mouth or anything like that. So that's awareness. Brands want awareness. And the second is branding. Branding also is in the form of what does the brand stand for, right? For example, if there is a very big brand, a multinational brand which supports an initiative like this, one of the intentions behind also is that they want to be known as a brand that supports the engineering fire that students should have in them. So it supports that sort of thinking, or it supports students. The brand wants to be known for that, right? That is a part of its branding goal that it has. It could be such a big brand. It could be BMW. It could be someone who does not need awareness per se. Everybody knows them already, but they want to be known that they're associated with causes like these. And that's where branding comes. This is fundamental to know that this is what brands are looking for. When you're approaching them for sponsorship, this is exactly what they want, which means that if you know what that they want, you can curate what you're offering as per that. Now, this is how you put out your value proposition. First things first. Again, we're talking about social media. We're in that domain, right? So first things, you have to prove your social media worth to them. I mean, you will have to put forward what is it that you bring to the table in terms of the social media piece of things out there, right? So what type of followers you have, what type of engagement your profile has, what type of content you put out there. All those are factors that come into play now when you say that, hey, you know what, this is what I bring to you from the social media perspective. And because of this, I can sort of bring to the table the branding and the awareness aspect of things, right? This again connects back to the first aspect that we discussed, which is you need to set your things in place first before you start interacting with these guys out there. The second, of course, is you have to create FOMO. FOMO is fear of missing out, right? You have to create FOMO in terms of aspects of, okay, you know what, your competitors or these guys, these brands out there are sponsoring events like these, and this is what they're getting out of it. This is the visibility that they've gotten, or, this is the popularity that they have gained. I think a brand like yours, this is the perfect type of cause or perfect type of event or an opportunity that I think you should be associated with. You create FOMO in them in terms of them missing out if they do not jump on this opportunity to sponsor your initiative out there, right? Then, of course, there's the part of creating levels of association, creating packages of sponsorship out there. Take any software product that you would have opted for, right? So let's say if you're subscribing for any software service out there, you will see the versions of free, pro, pro max or premium. There would be different names and they would have different pricing points out there and different things that you get in each of them. And typically what would happen is as the price increases, the value proposition also increases. You get 3 features here, you get 5 here, 10 there, and so on. Right? I mean, there are bronze, silver, gold packages out there. Correct. The idea is that with sponsorship too, you create that sort of layering, and you tell them, you know what, I have these 3 options in which you can sort of engage into a sponsorship arrangement with me, right? I mean, there's a very simple model that you can just arrange be the bronze partner for us, and these are the 2 things that you get out of it. But you know, if you want more, then this is the silver one. If you want even more, this is the gold one. And the smarter sort of approach there is you make the middle one, the silver one, curated in such a way that it is the most appealing to people, and they sort of want to jump on it very easily rather than opting for a bronze. And if they feel that gold will be too much for them, right? So you create it in such a way. If there are 10 things that you can offer to them, which we'll talk about in the next point, you tell them, okay, so the first package can give you 2 out of these 10 things. The second would give you 4, and the last would give you all 10 of them, right? So you make it sort of like a journey for them, and they have options to choose from. And then it is no longer a question of yes or no. It's a question of, okay, I have these options in front of me, which comes to the point of what exactly do you offer to them, right? From your social media side of things. Very simple thing is you can offer to them the social media recognition, correct? Which comes from things of you bring visibility to their brand, visibility through your content that you put out, visibility through your post, your stories, your reels, through your tweets, through maybe communities or groups on Facebook or on LinkedIn. You bring their brand into focus by talking about them, by creating content around. Okay, so that's the most fundamental thing that you can offer to any brand. The second, of course, is brand evangelism, which basically means that you become an ambassador of sorts for the brand, where you do talk about the brand, its propositions, sort of creating that brand credibility. This, of course, will apply a lot more for smaller brands or brands that are not, let's say, your A-listers in the business world. Right? Because they are actively looking for visibility. They're actively looking for people to sort of promote them out there. That could be an offering that you can provide them. And of course, there are signups, which means that if it's a brand where they would be in need of signups or people or students registering for certain type of things, that could also be an offering that you could propose to them. That let's say, hey, if you want to be a silver sponsor to us, we can offer you signups for this course or this thing or something like that. And of course, you have your army of friends, you have army of your college connects and things like that. And you can utilize them for this value proposition, right? The major point here is to actually structure it in a very smart way and not just say, you know what, I will just promote you on social media, right? Of course not. You structure it out very smartly so they feel that, oh, there is much more than just one thing that these guys can give them. Right. We move to the next point, which is executing the plan, right? And this is what makes or breaks the whole thing, because if it's not executed properly, I mean, all the planning, everything, it's just gonna be a wasted effort for you and the sponsor out there. Right? So this is how you sort of execute the whole thing. Be very clear about what is the objective of the sponsor, right? Every sponsor would have their own objective that they just want, or you know what, I just want to be known that I am also in this space. I want to be known that I support this cause, or I just want brand awareness. I want my service to be known. It could be a variety of those things. So understand what the objective there is. And based on that, you create the whole content plan, right? Which means that, so a content plan would include things like, okay, which platforms am I going to target? Right? If it's a very formal B2B sort of a brand, oh, LinkedIn is where I target as a platform. Or if it is a very lifestyle type of brand, something who's interested in a cause like mine, okay, maybe Instagram is a place I would want to promote it much more. So you choose the platform, you create a plan for it. You choose the tonality, wherein if it's a brand that is okay with a little more casual tonality, a little more fun or a relatable that students of your age can connect with, figure that part out. You define the buckets. Buckets basically mean, in this case, are content categories, which is what are the things can you talk about, right? Can you talk about your journey along with the brand being integrated with it? Are you just going to talk about the brand? What are the things that you're going to talk about, which we also cover in the next slide, and I'll get into that in detail. And a calendar, which means that, okay, how am I going to schedule all my content out there that I'm going to talk about from the sponsorship proposition that I have given to the client, to the sponsor out there. So make a calendar. Okay, so for the next 30 days or the next 60 days, this is how my content is going to flow out. And these are the frequencies and things like that, right? You also have to create an engagement plan, because there's a very high likelihood that you as individual people, or if you've created social media profiles of your groups, your teams out there, you may not have an extensive following, right? But you are going to need engagement. You're going to need to promise engagement to your sponsors for them to take interest in your cause. So you create an engagement plan, which would be a mix of organic and paid, where you say, okay, so we're going to achieve organic engagement because I have these followers. I'm going to share it on these groups that I'm part of. I'm going to have these people from my friend circle who are going to interact with it. So there's an organic engagement that could happen. And there's a paid engagement, wherein you say, okay, I'm going to put in 500 rupees or 1,000 rupees behind the content that I create. I'm going to promote them. I'm going to push them forward. And then accordingly, it's gonna gather some eyeballs there. It's going to gather engagement and things like that. Right? The next, of course, is, so that engagement plan sort of eases the mind of your sponsor that, okay, you know exactly what you're going to put out there. You know how you're going to push it forward as well. Then, of course, you have to create your content well in advance to run through the whole approval process and everything. Because when you're going to talk about your sponsor, you're going to have some content around them. I think in many cases, it would be important that the sponsor would want to know what you're going to put out, right? So to avoid the hassle, ensure that you're well in advance out there. Ensure that you're doing the best practices when you are making things live, right? In terms of, what format are you using? Are you using a reel? Are you using a text post? Are you using a story, an image? Figure what would work best for you and the sponsor. The type of hashtags that you should be using. Who should you be tagging when you're putting content out there? There's an option of collab as well on Instagram. Two profiles can sort of collab with each other there. What timing are you sort of posting things on, which you can figure out by your insights section or the dashboard on your social media, that when is your audience most active. You can also ask your sponsor that, okay, so whenever you put content out there, what are the timings that work for you, right? So you figure out the best practices and then you start the execution part. Then, of course, you create engagement, as I mentioned above. You do it organically, you do it through some paid mechanisms, and you create room for more sponsorship. What that means is when you put any content out there, you also create a call to action there, which says that if you're interested in sponsoring this, if you're interested in becoming one of our sponsors, reach out to us. So it's not just content that goes out there. These are also opportunities for people, more people who may be interested in sponsoring you further. Right? Now, with the content suggestions, here are a few content categories or buckets or type of things that you can talk about, right? There could be very simple sponsor showcase. This is the sponsor. There could be sponsor story, which is a little more humane in nature, a little more personal, with a bit of emotion in place that, okay, so what's their story? What have they done? What have they contributed and things like that. There could be a sponsor message as well, which is something that the sponsor wants to say to your audience, right? You can have content around sponsor integration in your day. For example, you're working on your Formula car out there, and let's say there's a sponsor for particular products or particular hardware that you're going to use. So you can integrate your content in a way that you show what you're doing and the brand is integrated into that content, right? You can, of course, talk about your journey, your team, and in that whole story, include the sponsor brands out there. Right? There could be behind the scenes of what is happening and you can have the sponsor integrated organically into the content, or you could have informative content, right? Wherein you could be putting content which can inform, inspire fellow students or your juniors who sort of want to take interest into what you're doing at this point, right? So these are different content varieties in which you can integrate your sponsor, and so that it's not very monotonous and there's a wider variety. You have to be creative. I mean, for a fact that social media is such a saturated and cluttered space in many ways, that if your content is not creative or engaging or entertaining, there's a very high likelihood it's going to get ignored. Right? So there are a lot of things that you can do to sort of make it creative and interesting. You could run contests for your followers. You could have engagement specific content, have a trivia quiz, have a poll, have a puzzle, things that can align with the work that you're doing, right? With your domain, it can align with the sponsor, their domain. I mean, that's a thematic thing that can be figured out, right? You can jump on trends that are happening. Right? I mean, you see reels, you see events that keep happening, or type of content or type of trends, that are being talked about. Why not use that to convey your message? Right? There's moment marketing, which is basically any interesting moment that happens. You jump on that moment to talk about your brand and your service. In this case, what is it that you want to convey? You can have challenges. I mean, I have seen some very interesting student groups who have created dance challenges. They have created some action challenges and things like that. And that becomes a very interesting viral trend out there. The whole idea being that you want to gather eyeballs, you want to get attention of people, right? I mean, memes are a great way of doing that. Of course, you'll have to figure out that will your brand be comfortable with memes, because not every brand would be, right? I mean, there could be enactments, which basically like small skits and things like that, which could be a one-person skit. I mean, there are so many influencers and content creators out there who do this one-person skit thing. They take up multiple roles, right? Those could be really entertaining and interesting. And just try to make it your own. That's a really important part, right? The type of content that you would align with, make it your own, so that it's not some generic parroted content that you're just putting out there, right? The next part is performance measurement. I mean, very frankly, you're doing all this, your sponsor would want to know what happened in the end, right? They would want to know, okay, what did you achieve out of it, correct? So you'll need to create a project analytics report there in terms of, so you'll need to do it for your brand page, your group page or your self page that way, and for the page of the sponsor out there. You need to figure out things like, okay, what sort of reach did we get? What sort of impressions did we get? What sort of engagement did we get? Things like that. Did we get any traffic? And your dashboard, your social media dashboards can give you all that information out there, right? So that data at the end of the project, or let's say on a monthly basis, would be really critical to keep your sponsor on board, or to sort of tell them that, you know what, this was worth it that day, right? Share your audience insights as well, that you realize this is the type of audience that has engaged more with us, or that's the type of audience who have visited the sponsor's website because of the content that we created and things like that, right? So that audience insight, and of course, some takeaways in terms of what is your learning out of this whole activity that we have done on social media. And that could be a learning which shows the sponsor that you didn't just do it for the heck of it. You actually derived learnings from it. You actually derived insights from it that can be useful for you and the sponsor as well moving ahead. Right. And the last part of the whole thing, which is retaining your sponsors. I mean, it's a huge uphill battle to find your sponsors, get them on board, but retaining your sponsors is also super important. It could be that you need them again in the future. It could be that you need them for something else, and a whole bunch of reasons out there. It could also be that you want to have your sponsor retained so that in future, when your juniors create a team out there, you're able to connect them together and say, hey, you know what? Here are my juniors. They have also working on a similar type of thing, and you've helped us out. Why not work with them as well? So, few things to be kept in mind to retain your sponsors, right? Number one, show gratitude via content. It's, I think, the most fundamental thing, that some of your content should explicitly be about being grateful to your sponsor and just saying that, okay, thank you for this, and this has helped our journey in this way. And not just saying thank you this, but rather saying how has it truly helped, right? How maybe there was some mentoring happening, maybe they sponsor some products or whatever. They helped you in your R&D budget or things like that, right? So show gratitude by content. Second is create other association avenues, right? I mean, if they're sponsoring you for X thing, try to find avenues where they can sponsor you for the Y thing as well, right? Or they could be associated with you in that. All that you're trying to do is create multiple touch points where you can be associated with them. That builds a relationship, that builds a long-term retention. The next is share your milestones with them and make it about them, right? Whenever you have a sponsor on board and let's say you achieve a milestone, right? You have overcome a challenge or anything like that, share that learning, share that story with them, tell them we were stuck here and this is what we did and this is, how we overcame it. And, your this input came in handy. If you can make it about them, nothing like it. A little ego boosting has never hurt anyone, right? And the last point is, of course, you have to stay in touch. That's super important. Getting a sponsor on board and then not being in touch with them is a very silly mistake that one can make. Also, let's say when you're done with everything, right? When the entire event is over and everything is over, ideally you should still be in touch with them because again, these are industry folks. These are folks that at some point in the career that you want to build, you may very likely come across or you may want to come across, right? So staying in touch with them is super important. And that sort of can also help, as I said, maybe tomorrow your juniors want some sponsors. So that whole cycle can just go on and on there. Right, so these are a few things that you can use for on your social media side of things to sort of retain your sponsor as well. Right, so with that, we come to the end of the session. This was a very quick one for me. I typically, when I teach things like these, I take about, I think, 8 to 12 hours in that and go into the depths of everything with very specific examples. But of course, we have to make do with the time that we have. I would love to know if any of you have any questions out there. I would be more than happy to answer. You can put it in the comment. You can unmute yourself. When people have no questions, I have this thing because I teach as well. So when people don't have questions, it's either they understood everything or they understood nothing. Right? So I optimistically try and assume that, okay, they have understood everything. Hence, they have no questions out there. But yeah, I mean, if you have any question, please feel free. We have to do a countdown. Tick, tick 1, tick, tick 2.
Guys, please. Yeah, okay. We have a question.
Okay, we have a question. How should we initially approach a sponsor through mail? Okay. So Chinmay, to be very honest there, a cold email may not always work best because, again, these guys would be getting a lot of emails out there. Try and see if you can connect with them on social media, something like a LinkedIn out there. And the best way to do it is connect with them, start interacting with their content, add some value in their content. If they put something out there, comment on it, react to it, and then start having a conversation first, right? And then when you're able to have some conversation is when you bring in what is it that you want. Okay. Because if you're going to just go to them and say, hey, you know what, I want the sponsorship, there is a chance it may not really follow through there. Right? Of course, this is not a strategy that you have to use every single time, right? But try to build a relation before you can actually ask them for something that you want. Correct? But in an event where you're approaching them in a cold manner and there's no relationship, there's no association, you're just reaching out to them via mail. Ensure that your mail, one, is not extensively too long. Nobody's going to read so much. Two, has a very interesting subject line out there. Don't write things like looking for sponsorship, right? Could be something very interesting like want to be the next mentor to the next F1 team that comes out of India, right? Make it interesting so people are curious about, oh, this is something that I could be interested in, right? And your email has to be interesting. The first paragraph, if it does not interest the reader, they're not going to read anything beyond that. Keep it precise, keep it clear, make it interesting for them, and ensure that you have mentioned clear things in terms of, okay, what is next? Should they reply to you? Can you connect with them? Are you asking for 10 minutes of your time so you can give them an elevator pitch, right? So just keep those things in mind. Dhaval is asking, okay, from riders, and I have a question about what if we approach a big brand like Nike? Lovely. To be very honest with you, you should. Okay, you absolutely should approach the biggest of brands out there. Do not shy away thinking it just because it's a big brand, because there is a very high possibility that if you can make it interesting for them, they would really back you for it, simply because they are so big that they don't really care about the money part of the sponsorship. Okay, it's money is immaterial to them. They would want to be associated with interesting causes happening, interesting events happening. And trust me, students are a community that a lot of brands, big brands out there, do want to be associated with in some way, right? So you should absolutely approach a big brand like Nike. And trust me, the mechanism does not change though. Right? Everything that we discussed, the mechanism remains the same out there. Ensure that you find the right people in those big organizations. I mean, please don't send emails or connection requests to the HR of the company or info at Nike or admin at Nike and things like that. It's just gonna get ignored and lost in millions of emails out there. Go on LinkedIn, find the right people, find interesting people that would be interested in these type of activities and start talking to them. And when you're talking to a huge brand like Nike or similar folks, don't have a very direct approach of, hey, I want sponsorship, right? Build an association, engage with their content, and then probably get to that conversation. Think of it I mean, you don't meet someone and straight away ask, will you marry me? Correct? You'd have a courtship period where you try to gather their interest and you know them, they know you, and eventually you pop the question, right? So think of it like that. Okay, does a Teams channel need to have a minimum number of followers to approach collaboration or possible sponsorship? The answer to that is yes, not in terms of the platform having any such requirement, right? But just for perception level, I would say that you should have anything, I mean, nothing less than at least 1,000, 2,000, 5,000, right? And that four-digit figure, right? Thousands has to be there. Now, how do you achieve it? One is, of course, support each other, get your friends, get your family members, and everyone to sort of connect with you and increase your following there. And the second is you can run some very simple follower campaigns, all right? And they will not be super duper costly. You may put in an overall budget of, let's say, 2,000 or 5,000, and you can still reach substantial numbers in terms of followers. Right now, how to run a follower campaign? I mean, I wish I could teach you, but just do a Google search on it. But the answer is have 1,000, 2,000 followers out there at least, so that you appear credible enough, right? And have at least 30, 40 pieces of content as well. I mean, it would be super weird if you have one post and 2,000 followers, right? Okay. Next was, if you don't have many contacts and you wish to develop your contact base, so how do you do it? Lovely. I think most of us start out with no connections, right? Unless, I mean, you come from such a background or have such a friend circle where you have super contacts out there, amazing for you. Doesn't happen very likely. I think the best way to do is find places where the people that you want to have contact with are present. So I teach a lot of students like yourself, but the ones who want to make a career in digital marketing, I teach them. And one of the things I tell them is, if you want to make a career in digital marketing and you're just starting out, right? You are like everyone else out there. So how do you stand out? Find connections, and the best way is LinkedIn, right? You connect with the right people on LinkedIn, the type of industries you want to be associated with, the type of people or domain you want to be associated with. Send your connection request to those people, start engaging and interacting with their content, start putting comments on their content, which can be a value add, right? And slowly and surely, you will fall in the radar of those people. And that's how connections are built, right? Even people like me who have spent 10 plus years in the industry, we still follow that mechanism of building contacts, right? So that's a very effective way. Go on LinkedIn, find the people, connect with them, start interacting with their content, and start engaging with that. The other, of course, is every chance that you can get to go to some meet and greet sessions or some seminars or some events and things like that, right? As students, there are a lot of events and seminars that keep happening. Try to be part of as much things as you can, even if they may not be particularly of your domain, simply because you meet likely people in the most unlikely of places. Right? So those are some ways in which you can build your contact there. Yeah, I think I have answered the questions. Anything else? Or shall we call it a day? Or an evening in this case? Cool. I guess that was pretty much it. I don't see anyone else having any question out there. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you for patiently listening to the whole thing. I hope there is something that you have learned or gathered from it. I'll be more than happy to share this presentation with the team, and they can share with you if that's how it works. And I wish you all the very, very best for your project out there. Really rooting for you guys out there. I remember when I was in college, I know my friends who were in similar teams and had similar projects, and it was super exciting to see something built from nothing. Right? So all the very, very best to you on that. And I'm really rooting for you. And thank you so much for being a patient audience. Charlotte, over to
Thank
you.
you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much, Sarvesh. That was a very insightful presentation, and I'm sure the students out there, have benefited out of it. So we'll end the session right now. Sarvesh, once again, thank you for the session this evening. We appreciate your time and commitment towards sharing your experience and expertise with us and the participants. Thank you to all the members for joining us. We hope you found this session enlightening, and have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Charlotte. Thank you, guys. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you. You too. Have a good evening.